Cool. Episode 3. It's fun.
Yes.
Cooking along with some of the stuff. Last episode, we were talking about like creating like a steady flow of leads and like what you would do in a brand new market.
Yeah.
If you had no contacts, no capital, like how would you find success, build some wealth and everything? And that's cool. And I think we were talking about towards the end of that, well, how do you, once you have leads coming in, how do you like have a system of leads that never stop coming? But I think we should save that, because my thought here, and we talked about this before this episode, is that people from what you already shared could be getting their first 1 or 2 deals.
Yeah.
The next question I would have is like, well, how do you get the money for that? You know, especially a lot of people are like, well, do I have to have like earnest money? Do I have to have a certain amount of money in the bank to be able to like even have deals come? Do I need to have relationships with private lenders, hard money lenders? Like what do I need to have prepared? If a deal does show up in my lap, I'm like, ARV looks good. The deal looks really good. There's a spread on it. How do like I make the money? But I guess I'm really curious about that, because I think in entrepreneur world, we're like, for me, I learned go as lean as possible. Like, don't spend your own money. Don't get too many, like, don't get an epic office yet. Don't get too many tools you don't need. Get the bare minimum of software you need. Like, just start out by selling, you know, like put together your stuff and sell. And then once you sell, you can put together. It's like, you know, there's that saying like, jump out of the airplane, build the parachute on the way down. That's kind of the model of entrepreneurship I learned that made me successful. But now that I have money, it's a lot easier, because I'm like, well, no, I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to get this thing because I can afford $5 or $10 grand to start up something. But I'd love to hear, like, what are your thoughts around this when somebody does have that deal or 2 or 3 showing up in their lap?
Yeah, great question. Because money to me is something that holds a lot of people back. It held me back when I first started, is because I just didn't understand that you could invest in real estate with little to no money. I actually read a book because when I first started, I thought that the only way you could build a rental portfolio was the traditional route, where you save up 20%, you put it down on a house, and you get a tenant in there, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And actually, that was the reason that we moved from Denver to St. Louis, was because in my mind, I was like, hey, I love what I do right now as a pastor, and but I also want to make a little bit more money. But to save up 20% down on a house was, you were looking at,
when's that going to happen?
Yeah. Houses were $400,000. So I was like, I'd have to have $80,000 to put down on a house.
Jeez.
And I'm not making anywhere near that a year. We're paycheck to paycheck. For me to save up 20% down on a house in Denver, that's going to take me 10 years,
I literally was talking to a mortgage guy when we were buying our house here. And I was like, hey, we're looking to get into some investing at some point. He's like, oh, yeah, we do a lot of investment loans. He's like, as soon as you got 20% down,
exactly.
We can start looking at some investment properties for you. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know when that's going to happen.
Exactly. Well, that is literally why we moved, because I was looking at the St. Louis market, and I was like, hey, I can buy houses in St. Louis for, $150,000. So then I only have to save, or even cheaper than that, for $100,000. So then I only have to save up 20 grand. And that to me was more doable. And so we moved from Denver to St. Louis. In my mind, I was like, you know what? We're going to live lean and mean. It's also cheaper to live in St. Louis. We're going to live lean and mean. We're going to save up $30,000 every couple of years, and we're going to put that down on a house. And over the course of the next 10 or 15 years, we're going to buy 10 houses, and then we're going to pay those off over the next 20 years. And by the time I'm 60 or 70, we're going to have 10 or 15 paid off rentals.
Sure.
And that's going to be my retirement. And so that was the thought that I had. And so I was exactly like that, where money was keeping me from entering into the game, because I was like, I have to save up 20%. And then I read a book, and it was, I
read a book.
Yeah, I read a book.
Yeah,
I read a book. First one ever. And I think was David Green was the person who wrote it. And he laid out the process of finding hard money, finding private money. This book was specifically around rental properties, called the Burr method, but how you can basically use hard money or private money to buy and renovate a house. Then you can take that to the bank, you can get it refinanced. And so essentially, I'll use quick numbers just so this can make sense for anybody that's listening, or for you.
Because I'm stupid. Because real estate. Yeah, I know.
Dude.
Gosh, who even let me on this show?
But Like, let's say I find a house that I know the ARV is going to be $100,000 on it, which is low, but just for easy numbers, because I'm not that smart with math. I know the ARV is going to be $100,000. It needs $20,000 in repairs on it. So my offer on that would probably be around $55,000. And the reason for that is because if I use private money or hard money, I buy it for $55,000. I put $20,000 into it. I'm all into that property now for $75,000. I can take that to a bank, have the bank appraise it. The bank's going to say, hey, it's worth $100,000. We'll give you a loan. It's 75% of the value, which is the $75,000 that I have into it. I'd be able to recapture that $75,000 and now own that house with no money out of my own pocket, because there's 25% down technically on that house. It's just an equity that I've created because I found the deal and I rehabbed it. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like when you do that with a bank and you show them the equity, is there like a finesse or like a presentation involved that you kind of have to present to that bank in a way where they can see like, oh, this is like, do you have to have deals you've already done for a bank to take you seriously? Do you have to have it in like a document folder? Is like, what's the presentation like when you bring that to a bank?
No, that's so there's enough people out there doing the Burr method that most banks know what it is. And so you do have to find like you
wouldn't go to Wells Fargo though and do this.
I don't know. I've never worked with them. But potentially, like I know people that use national banks. I use local banks. I've got a couple local banks,
credit
that are
unions.
incredible. But so most banks know what it is. For me, I just had to explain, hey, here's my business plan. I'm out there hunting for deals that I can buy below market value that are distressed. And because I'm finding it and paying below market value for it and fixing it up, I'm creating equity in that property. And some banks are all about that as long as they have their 25% of equity, and they'll send out an appraiser and make sure that you've actually done a rehab. And so if they do have to take it back from you, they're protected because there is a sizable amount of equity there already. So if you stop paying, they would take it back. And then the other thing is, they want to a lot of times see like a lease for the rents on it. So they know, oh, this property is also paying for itself because there's a tenant there and leasing it. So,
but that doesn't really work right now with interest rates and everything.
Oh, yeah. And we could dive into like DSCR loans because typically they want you to be at like 1.2 debt service coverage ratios is what it's called. And so what that means is if all of your payments on it, so let's say your mortgage, your interest, your taxes, vacancy, CapEx, maintenance add up to $1,000 a month. Yeah. They want that property to rent out at $1,200 a month. So then they know like, hey, we are protected to give you a loan for this amount because you have a tenant paying $1,200 a month, and there's some coverage there for us. So it's not a risky loan.
The payment's protected.
Yes. Yeah. And they still want you to be at, so they'll only lend up to 75-80% on that. But a lot of times, even at 75-80%, you can't hit that threshold or that ratio.
Well, like even right now, DSCR loans, like the low ones I've seen right now in the market are like 6.75. Like,
oh, the interest rates are high on those for sure. But the interest rates are high on any sort of loan right now.
That's why it's not your play to buy and hold at the moment.
Right now, we're not buying and holding a ton. If we are, we're putting a sizable amount down so it can.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's the way that you can make them work is you can be at a 50% LTV, and then it'll hit that 1.2 threshold that you need to hit. But the problem with that is that you have to have capital. So like right now, the whole myth that, hey, you can buy rental properties without any money out of your own pocket. For the most part, unless you are just finding an incredibly great deal, that's not true. It was true in 2020, 2021, 2022. When I first started, I didn't leave any money tied up into a house for 3 years, where I'd be all in and I would get it refinanced at 75% LTV. I'd be able to take all of that money and go invest in another house and another house and another house and just continue to cycle that money over and over again. Yeah. Right now, I can't pull out 75% because if I were, it wouldn't hit that DSCR ratio. Sure. And so I would have to pull out honestly around 50%, or I'd only get to pull out about 50%. So I'd have to leave a sizable amount of money tied up into that deal. And you only have so much money to be able to spend. And so for us, on really great properties, we'll still leave money tied up into it. But That's because we've spent the last 4 years building our reserves and we flip houses to make money.
So the psychology and the behaviors of somebody that's been doing this, that's done a lot of deals, way different than somebody that's like maybe done 5 deals a year for the last, or even like 1 or 2 deals a year for the last couple of years.
Yeah. So if you're first starting and you don't have money, what I would tell you to do is flip and wholesale.
Right.
For some people, like if you have you would have money then, but if you had a great W-2 job and you don't want to flip and wholesale, but you want to invest in real estate, well, then it's either put a really sizable chunk down on a long-term rental that'll cash flow, or you can get creative with like a short-term rental or a mid-term rental. I just think those are really hot right now. And, I'm not 100% confident of the longevity of those, where it's like long-term rentals have been around forever. They're tried and true. The longevity of, you're seeing it right now where people are buying Airbnbs and they were paying a ton of money for them because they could rent them out for a crazy amount a week.
Now.
Well, that was even like 2022, 2023. You're seeing Airbnbs drop a ton. And it's just like in any other industry though, where like, the cream's always going to rise to the top, where if you're really great at that Airbnb model and you're really great at furnishing the house and creating an experience for your clients, you're still going to make money. What I saw was a lot of people buy Airbnbs and do really terrible rehabs or renovations on them and put terrible, appliances, or they get all of their furniture off of Craigslist Marketplace or Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace for really cheap, and they wouldn't have any sort of amenities. And those people are hurting right now because people are just not staying at Airbnbs as much, where it's like, wait, I could stay at a hotel and have everything done for me.
My back's not going to hurt in the morning because of the bed I'm sleeping on. I know what the towels are going to be like. I know I'm going to have like service. I'm going to be taken care of.
They're going to clean the room. There's no really
the cleaning fees. The
exactly.
Cleaning fees, all that stuff in Airbnbs ends up net higher. I never use Airbnb anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So when we travel, we're always staying at a hotel now, where for a while we were staying at Airbnbs. It was fun. It was cool. But then it just made more sense for us to stay at a hotel. The only time we'll stay at an Airbnb is if we're going to we're traveling with our family and maybe another family.
You need a big space.
And we're getting a big house or something like that. But for us, it's just easier. We don't have to clean. We don't have to worry about cleaning fees. We don't have to worry about, a lot of Airbnbs as you're leaving, they're like, I've seen like some, satirical videos on Instagram or YouTube of like, people when they're leaving the Airbnb, like take out the trash, do this, the hotel versus Airbnb. And so
I know I hate that. I'm literally like, no, what's the cleaning fee for? And then you're going to rate me if I don't take out your trash?
Well, we stayed in Airbnb once. And we were 3 minutes late of leaving the Airbnb, 3 minutes late. And they saw us on their Ring camera. And so we left 3 minutes after checkout. And we got charged like $180 late fee. Yeah.
What?
$180 late fee for being 3 minutes late. And they saw us on the Ring camera. Yeah, I was like, this is stupid. Absolutely stupid. Yeah. So, and it wasn't like they had cleaners there waiting for us to get out of the house or anything like that.
There was no reason for it.
No reason for it. So, to be fair, like it did say, if you leave late,
we're going to charge you 3 minutes.
3 minutes. They didn't tell us that they were going to have
your watch could be wrong at that point. Like there's got to be margin of error.
Ring camera and track us. They didn't tell us that. But,
oh my gosh.
It was in the fine print.
Freaking Nazis.
Yeah. But so I say all that to say, like, if you are going to go the STR route, like you just have to be the best. You have to have amenities. Like when we're traveling, some things that we're looking for is like a playroom for kids. Obviously, great like community areas where living room, obviously good kitchen, stuff like that. I know that like the higher end ones, like obviously a pool or pickleball courts are huge right now. So you have to have like think through or sauna, cold plunge, all that stuff.
So now you're getting on the investor side of an Airbnb. Now you're getting into bigger capital.
Yeah,
if you want to have an actual good investment.
Yeah. So let's go back to like if I'm just starting, I have no money and I'm flipping and I'm wholesaling.
Yeah, that's the strategy.
The way to get money for that is one of the things that I always say is when you're a beginner, you're always worried about money, but money chases the deal. So one, you just have to find a great deal. If you find a great deal, it's easy to get capital for it. If you can sit down and say, hey, Like if I sat down with you right now and, you know, I found a house in St. Louis and I could show you, hey, here's the house. It's worth $200,000. Here's the 6 comps within a quarter of a mile that support this house being worth $200,000. Here's my exact rehab budget that's itemized, and it's going to cost me $50,000 to rehab it. And here's every single thing. Here's also the taxes, the insurance that I'm going to have to be paying on it. And I'm buying this house at $80,000. So I'm going to buy it for 80. I'm going to put 50 into it. I'm going to sell it for 200. Will you give me $130,000 to do that stuff? And when I sell it at 200, I'm going to give you, right now I'm at anywhere between 10 to 12%. But at the beginning, if I'm just trying to find money, I'm going to offer more than that. And I would say like, it's going to take me 4 months to do it. Here's all my bids. Here's the contractors I'm using. If you give me $130,000, I'm going to give you 40% of the profit on this deal, which is going to look like it's, you know, $60,000. 40% of $60,000. I don't know what that is. $24,000. You're going to say yes, because I've got a great deal. I've laid it out. I've made it very clear to you of here's exactly what's going to happen.
So I'm going to give you 130. I'll make 154.
Yeah, you'd get $154,000 back in 4 months. And obviously you have to have that 130 and it not, you know, be anywhere else. But if I say that to you, you're going to say yes. Most of the time.
That's $6,000 a month for nothing.
Yes, exactly. And as you do more, so one of the things that I would say to people is like, at the beginning, don't be greedy, because you don't have a track record. So like at the beginning, I wasn't greedy with my private money lenders or my hard money lenders. Hard money lenders are pretty much set fees, but with my private money lenders, I wasn't greedy because I didn't have a track record. Now I have a track record and have done it enough where I would just say on that, I'd say, hey, I'll give you 12% on it. So 12% annualized, which means if you give me $130,000, I'm paying you $1,300 a month for 4 months. So you would get, you know, $5,200 back. At the beginning, it's like, hey, I'm going to give you a cut of the equity on this deal, or I'm going to pay you 12% plus plus 3 points or something like that. And
so you're saying this to banks?
No, I'm saying this to private money lenders.
To private money lenders. So find private money lenders, how do you even do that? Is that?
Yeah. So I'm just saying the overarching theme of that is people are so worried about private money, and you don't have to be worried about private money.
Got it.
You'd have to be worried about the deal. You find the deal, money always follows.
Money's going to follow it.
But when you're finding private money lenders, this is another thing that just a lot of people, and I realize I was in a fortunate situation where my family wasn't rich, but we lived in a really great area and just knew a bunch of wealthy people. And when I say wealthy, you're not thinking of the Jeff Bezoses or the
right, yeah,
people
like
that are worth
stupid wealthy. Yeah.
I knew a lot of, what would you call them, the next door millionaires, or the people that weren't like
a $2 million net worth. Or...
Yeah, probably even people. So for me, even less than that. People that had been working their entire lives, being conservative with their money, saving it up, and they had $600,000 or $700,000 in their bank, and they weren't necessarily putting it to work for them. So those are the people that you're looking for. Even getting a little bit more creative with it, I had a ton of friends in Denver, because I was in St. Louis this time, but I had a ton of friends in Denver who had bought houses in 2011, 2012, 2013, and they had doubled in value by the time I started getting into investing in 2020. Mm-hmm. And then they either refinanced those houses or they took out HELOCs on those houses. And at that time you were getting that at 2.7%, 3%. And so I would say, hey, give me $200,000, and they would be able to borrow against their HELOC, or if they refinance, they'd have it in the bank at 3%, and I'm going to return you 12%. So you're essentially just,
and then they pay off the HELOC, and then they have net income right there.
Yeah, they net 9% on that.
That's great.
And so just getting creative about what you're thinking through. But that's, for me, I just sat down and I made a list of names of everybody that I could think of that had equity in their home, that had potentially money in the bank, and I put together a private money lending packet, and it was really simple, and it was really honest of, here's my game plan. So I am actively looking for houses that are not listed on the market, that are distressed. We talked about, I think last week, about having a very clear buy box. I listed my buy box. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's the avatar. I listed the exact process. So I buy the house, I rehab it, I sell it, and I make X amount of money. And out of that X amount of money, you get your initial principal back or whatever you lended me plus interest when I sell it. I listed out the ways that they're still protected where they are on the deed of trust. So if I were to ever stop paying them, they would get the house. We did a promissory note, which we did a personal guarantee, which at the time I didn't have any money, so they wouldn't have gotten anything from me. But did a personal guarantee. I would show them the insurance agent that I was going to use, so it's protected if the house were to burn down or something crazy were to happen on it. They're still protected there. So just showed them all of their protections. And part of it too is like all of these people knew me or knew my family,
which is the bigger thing.
Yeah. And so I will never not pay back an investor.
Right.
Even when I first started, which I didn't have any money, if we were to have lost money on a deal, I would have figured out a way to pay them back. And it might have had to been, hey, I
need to do a couple more deals and then I can pay you back, or no?
Yeah, that, or hey, I'm if I would have lost big on my first deal, I probably would have, went and just continued to work and drove Uber or something on the side and just saved up money to pay them back. And that's also goes back to my market. I was really protected in my market because let's say I lose big on a deal. When you're buying a house for $150,000, putting money into it, selling it at, $250, whatever, and maybe it only sells it, maybe your rehab's $10,000 over budget and only sells at $230. And I was planning on making $30,000 on the deal. And maybe now I lose $10,000. Like, they're still going to get everything back except that $10,000 in the interest. And if today, I would just cover the rest myself. At that time, I wouldn't have had the money to cover the rest, but they would have only lost $15,000, And so then that's easier for me to say, hey, I'm just going to buckle down for the next 6 months and go drive Uber, wait tables, something. I'm just saying, I would have figured it out
to protect the relationship.
Back. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's important. Well, I guess, can I just have a quick tangent? We can jump back to it. Did you have deals you lost money on in the beginning?
Yeah, for sure. Not at the beginning. I think my first deal that I lost money on would have came in, because I started in like the beginning of 2020. I think the first deal I lost money on was in the fall of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was super protected by the market. The market, I mean, if anybody knows anything about real estate, 2020 just went crazy. The market is in St. Louis, I think nationally, but St. Louis, the market went crazy. And so I was fortunate to be in the position where there might have been deals that I was supposed to lose money on, but because the market was so hot, I didn't lose money on it, And so I think it was a really great time for me to enter the market because I was protected with just the appreciation in houses. It was going up, I was buying at 70, 75%, but by the time I went to sell it, it was,
which was like 4 months.
Yeah. But the market would go up, 5, 6, 7% in that time. Yeah. There were multiple times where I ran numbers on houses, like one that I'm thinking off the top of my head. I ran it at $320,000. That was my ARV. And honestly, that was an aggressive ARV where it was like just everything. There's multiple comps at $320,000. I had probably a $50,000 spread. If buying it at 320, I was going to be all in for, $270 with holding costs, insurance, all that stuff. I probably had a $50,000 spread, and we sold it at $384,000.
So you made a $100,000 spread.
Yeah, it was over $100,000, but that happened multiple times. So not multiple spreads that were over 6 figures, but multiple times where it was like, hey, here's my ARV, and we blew that out of the water just because the market was so hot.
So I guess I'm curious, like, why did you lose money on that deal?
Yes. So on that one, it was foundation issues.
So it was like unforeseen problem.
Yep.
And that just happens.
That happens. Over time, I've gotten way better. What are the things?
Like, what do you know now that would prevent you from that happening again?
Yeah. So like right now, we don't buy houses that have severe foundation issues unless we get a foundation inspection. We don't buy houses on septic. And we don't buy houses with pools unless we get a septic inspection or a pool inspection. And the reason for that is because I can walk a house now and I can, can look at the sewer or the stack and say it needs a new stack. I can even look at the yard for the most part. We don't do sewer lateral inspections. We probably should. For somebody new, that could be a big issue, but sewer lateral for the most part is, I mean, worst case scenario, it's going to be 10, 12 grand to replace if it does need a new sewer lateral. And a lot of times you can just do a spot replacement or whatever. So we don't do those. But outside of that, everything, if I miss it, it's only going to be a couple $1,000s that I missed, but I know what everything in a house is going to cost. Like a bathroom's going to cost this, a kitchen's going to cost this, a stack's going to cost this, HVAC's going to cost this.
So would you have avoided that deal early on? I guess with what you know now,
sure.
would that be a deal you're like, I wouldn't touch that?
It was a miss on my part. The walls were bowing. There were cracks in the walls, and I thought that we could just do some like carbon fiber stripping and it would be fine. I think I'd put like $4,000 in my budget for that, and it ended up being like a $30,000. They had to do piers, they had to dig down around and like stabilize the wall.
Jeez.
So it ended up being like $30,000+ to fix it. So then I was $25,000 off. And then on top of that, the reason that the foundation was bad was because the backyard was slanted right down into the house, and so when it would rain or anything, the water would come right into and there was hydrostatic pressure that would build up along the walls, and it was bowing the walls, and so we had to do a ton of grading around the house as well, and put in a ditch and everything, and so that one got really expensive. Same with a pool. So we just we put a house under contract with the pool. I was very clear with the owner, hey, we have to do a pool inspection on it, and it came back as was going to cost $60,000 to get the pool.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell the pool was
pretty dilapidated.
Yeah. So but people miss that sometimes, where they're like, oh, the pool's dilapidated, I'm going to put $10,000 in the budget for it, and then they buy the house, they don't do an inspection, and then it's a $50,000 or $60,000 inspection,
or $200 in Hawaii.
Yeah, $200. Yeah. So like with the pool, we backed out of that contract, but I was very open and clear with the owner of like, if it comes back anything over $10,000, I'm going to ask for a price reduction, and this one was just so big that, and he was like, I can't lower it, the price $50,000.
Is this some of the stuff that you teach with like deal analysis?
Yeah,
like some of these things? Because this sounds like one of the reasons, if I were getting into this, why I'd want a mentor or somebody, and it's like, it's not a shameless plug of Deal Flow Real Estate. Like, hey, that's why you should trust us. But I'm just saying, like, whether it's us or someone else, I feel like that's why it's important to have somebody that can also be another set of eyes on things that you're doing, especially if you're like newer and doing more volume and stuff, is like, you've gone through some of those failures, and hopefully, I mean, I know a lot of the people that are like in our mastermind and stuff, you just saving that for later. What is this? What is that? An everlasting gobstopper?
Yeah, that's what we teach. And I think it's so important. One of my favorite stories, like regarding that, is when I first started. I joined a mastermind in St. Louis that was $1,000 a month, and at the time, we had done our very first flip. It was in the fall of 2019.
Yep.
I might have talked about on this where. We just did everything wrong. We ended up having to move in there and renovate it ourselves.
Wow.
And we didn't lose money on that one, but if you had added up our man hours that we put into it and put a price tag on that, like say we were paying ourselves $20 an hour, we would have lost a substantial amount of money.
Got it.
But we didn't lose money on that because we did the work ourselves. After that one, Lexi and I were actually a lot of people might've been like, I'm never doing this again. This sucked. Lexi and I were really fired up about real estate, but we knew that we didn't want to go through what we had just gone through again. So I went and I joined a program that was $1,000 a month. It was for St. Louis area investors only. It was best decision I've ever made. And one of my favorite stories is I was so like apprehensive because $12,000 is a lot of money.
It is,
especially when you don't have any money and you're making $45,000 a year. I'm like, I'm going to spend a third of my salary on education program just to be around other investors and learn from other investors. It didn't make sense to me, but I had heard on a podcast it was good to do, so I was like, I'm just going to do it. And
now you're paying it forward.
Yeah, and and so I did it. And our third deal, maybe third or fourth. We bought it, and it had mold in the house, and I knew that it had mold into it, but it didn't seem that bad. And, but it had mold in it. And we were doing mold remediation on it, and I hadn't put very much money into the budget at all for mold remediation. And part of that is I just didn't know. And so we called out a company, and they came and they, looked at the walls and looked at the house, and we're like, yeah, it needs to be completely gutted and drywall put back up and taped and all that good stuff. And they gave us a quote for, it was like $18,000.
Jeez.
Yeah.
On how many square feet, you think?
Oh, it was a small house. This was like a 760 square foot.
I was going to say, that's kind of a low quote from what I would know in my head, but I know is Hawaii market.
Yeah. Well, to me, it was high because I did not have that in the budget.
Yeah.
And literally at the time, I'm like, this is going to ruin us. Like, we're done. This sucks. And so I took it to that $12,000 a year mastermind that I was in, and I just told them that. And there's a guy that was in that as well, who was an investor, but he also was he'd just been doing it for a long time. And he's like, yeah, if it truly, like, if the mold is that bad, then yeah, that seems like a fair quote. But he's like, I don't know if the mold's that bad, and he had me send him some pictures of it, and he looked at him and he's like, the mold's not that bad. So he was like, go into like a closet or something, cut out a little, 2 foot by 2 foot, section of the walls, look on the back side of the wall. And if the mold isn't growing on the back side of the walls are salvageable, because essentially it would have like made it through the walls, and then it's game over. Yeah. So I went and I did that, looked at the back, and he's like, yeah, you can still salvage all of this. And so ended up calling a bunch of other companies. They would come over. I'd show them that little piece of drywall that the mold hadn't made it through. And every one of the companies said the same thing, is, oh, we don't need to rip out the drywall. We can just remediate it as it sits. And we ended up doing it for like $2,500. So yes. So like that little tip right there saved me $15,000, paid for the entire program. Everything else was just,
and that's one of probably hundreds of things that
I wouldn't be where I was without the connections that I made, the just being able to bounce ideas off of people, So
there's two things here that I want to highlight though, because this is true for my industry too. Being in the education space online, like when we started our company, we worked with a couple coaches, and I loved my coaches. I worked with this guy, Taki Moore, and actually we had a program with him. It was $50,000 a year. That we paid him.
You guys paid $50,000
a year.
Program.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we paid, it was like $2,000 for his first program. Then we paid $2,500 a month for a year. And then we paid $5,000 a month for a year. So it was actually $60,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Somewhere around there. And then I had other coaches too that I had paid. I was paying, I think I'd probably paid, there was one experience Sammy and I paid for. It was just it was actually life coaching, in like this therapy package for 1 week. We paid $11,000 for 1 week. There's so many things that we did, like leadership programs. We've flown all over and done stuff, but there's like two things I want to highlight here for successful people, because I attribute so much of my success to the mindsets, the skills I learned in those programs. And also, like you just mentioned, all of those different industry specific things that save you having to spend all your time, effort, and sacrifice on your own, learning the hard way when somebody else has already done it, and you can literally purchase their knowledge from things they've already cost themselves. Yeah. And the two mindsets I feel like for successful people is what you're saying. We went through a hard situation, Lexi, you and Lexi, and then you still were, you buckled down and you're like, our backs are against the wall. This is not an option to not succeed in this. And what a lot of people do is they dabble and put a toe in instead of going, no, I'm all in. I'm burning the boats. I'm here. Yeah. I'm burning the ships. I have no way out. I'm going to be good at this or I'm not. Yeah. And I'm not looking at a short time horizon to figure that out, a month or 2 months or 3 months. Like, no, I'm in this for the next 5 years. And if it doesn't work out in 5 years, maybe then I'll look at changing, but I'm going to make sure I'm successful. I feel like that's, mindset number one. Like, I'm going to be successful at this. The other one is I'm going to pay somebody that's way smarter than me at every point in my life to constantly have somebody that's bigger than me in some area, so I can constantly be growing and not paying my own time, effort, and sacrifice to learn things that people already know. Yeah. I feel like those two things alone, you'll be successful. You might lose a little bit here and there, but net, you will gain way more if you just have those two mindsets. Would you say it's true?
100. And I think there's what you said, you might lose some here and there, but net, you're going to gain more. Because it's the law of averages in my mind when it comes to coaching, where I've spent money on coaching where I've been like, that sucked. You know, that wasn't good. That wasn't valuable.
Me too.
But then I've also spent money on coaching where I'm like, I would have paid 100 times what I was charged for that, because it changed my business. It changed my life. I've made millions of dollars off of one thought or one key like instance throughout this program. And so the law of averages, I think coaching, you're always going to come out ahead. The problem with that is if you're just starting out and you have a very limited budget, it's like, it's got to be the right coaching. Within as we've grown,
it's so much more risky.
Yes.
Because what you lose feels like everything.
Yes. Yeah. If I would have joined that $12,000 a month mastermind, or $12,000 a month, $12,000 a year mastermind, and had not gotten any value out of it, it would have been detrimental, because $12,000 was so much money then.
Yeah.
Now I can be a little bit more, I can pay more. So
you can spend 50 grand a year if you needed to.
Which we spend well over 50 grand a year.
Here's the other thing though I like about that is when you purchase the right program for 12,000 and it's a lot to you and it hurts and it's like, man, this is like everything we have. Your level of accountability you hold yourself to do the stuff is so high.
That's so true too.
Because you have so much skin in the game.
Yeah. Because now I can pay for something where I don't take it as seriously. Maybe where it's like, yeah, I'll spend $5,000 to go to this conference and get to hang out with these people. And I still think that, I'm making great connections and whatnot. I always see like value in that, but I could learn some things and be like, oh, that'd be really great for our business. But then never put it into action, because that $5,000, even though $5,000 is a lot of money, it's not going to make or break me. And so having that, like, this hurts a lot.
It needs to hurt.
But I'm going to put in the effort. And one of the things that I saw once when I was kind of a part of a different program like this was we started with a really low price point, under $1,000. And people would sign up and we were able to track like how far they made it through the program. And nobody made it through like the first couple of videos.
Yeah.
The higher the price point, the farther people made it through, the more successful they were, the more deals they got.
It's accountability.
And so that money is accountability for sure. So
dude, I literally used to say this, like, we sold emotional health consulting, and that's what we did for 5 years, my wife and I, and had a team of 24 salespeople. And one of the things I would teach our salespeople, and this is actually before my brother came along too, and he started helping grow our team and stuff, is I would say like, hey, when you get to that point at the end, and this is actually something I would say, I would talk to a prospect, and if I knew this was the right thing for them, they knew it was the right thing. We'd get to the end, it's scary around money. You know, for us, I think at one point we were charging $4,000 for 6 months just to work through emotional health. Like, it's an emotional health offer. It's not, you're not making money from it or anything like that. And so getting people to invest in that is sometimes difficult, but people knew they needed it. We knew they needed it. We get to the end and they'd be like, okay, I don't know if I could do this. I might be able to do payments or something. And I'd be like, hey, if you need to do payments, that's okay. But I just want to actually say this. If you can feasibly put all of it down and pay in full, I 100% advocate for that, because it will hurt you more. And they're like, what? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I want it to hurt you. And I know that sounds so crazy, but because I know if this hurts, doesn't destroy you, but it hurts you, that 2 months from now, when the going gets tough, you're not going to go, oh, I can just bail. I can give up on this. You're going to go, I paid too much to give up on myself. I paid too high a price and I'm invested in this. And that's what's going to get you through the hard times. We can hold you accountable, but the only way you'll hold yourself accountable is if you know what you invested to be here, to make sure you don't waste it.
Yeah. An example of that is right now I'm in a fitness challenge, and it's like you got to get 10,000 steps a day. You have to hit your, protein intake for the day. There's just like 3 or 4 things that you have to do. And if you don't hit that every single week, you have to put $100 into the pot. And so it's a 6-month challenge.
What are you giving it to a charity that you like hate at the end of it?
The problem is for the last 3-4 months, I've just been paying $100 a week, because every week, you know, I'm like, it's just $100. I mean, $100 is a lot of money. I'm not trying to say it's not a lot of money, but at the same time, I'm like, I would rather, you know, hang out with my kids and my wife and not go to the gym or not go for a walk, or I'd rather, you know, go eat this meal out with friends. That's worth $100. Now, and so it doesn't hurt, I guess. That $100 doesn't hurt. So every week I'm like, whatever. I'll pay into it again this week. If it was $1,000 a week, you better believe I'm eating healthy and I'm going on the walks, and, you know, because it would hurt way more. So I do think that there's just power in making it hurt a little bit. Because you are way more likely to dive in and be, you know, you're going to hold yourself accountable. You know, so
I think this is a worthwhile tangent. And also I think it's interesting because this whole conversation today was about capital. And I honestly, like, would you say between saving money for a first deal or saving money to learn the skills in like a program, like a mastermind program, which would be the better investment right up front?
Program for sure. No doubt about it. Again, it's got to be the right program. So I would encourage everybody, like, do your due diligence. It's got to be the right program. But if you have $12,000, let's say, like for me at the beginning, to put down on a program, or $12,000 to put down on a house, put that down on a program, because the program is going to teach you how to scale, or to use that, you know, to do it without your own money, to find private money lenders. It's going to teach you how to save $12,000 really, really quick via, you know, tips on, like, any industry, but I'm thinking real estate specifically, tips on rehabbing a property, finding the right contractors. Like,
it's also the difference between you doing one deal and 10 deals.
Yeah. Finding the right contractor is going to, you know, it could take you years, but if you get one good piece of advice, and you find one in a month, then all of a sudden you've saved yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next couple of years. And so, I would say $12,000 on the program. And I just think that's important. I also think there is, if you want to do it yourself, that's completely fine. There is a lot of great education out there for free. But my philosophy on paying somebody is, I could figure it out. I think that I'm smart enough, and that I have the capacity and the work ethic to figure it out. But it is how would I put it is, so like, my kids love, we make these cheeseburger bowls. So it's just like ground beef and rice and, you know, I don't know, onions and avocado, and then there's some ketchup in there, and they love it. So we make these cheeseburger bowls, and so they love ground beef. And so we buy ground beef in bulk from Costco, and we'll freeze a bunch of it. And so we can pull out that ground beef, and we can, you know, set it on the kitchen counter and let it thaw out. And it's going to take, you know, because it's in a 10-pound package, it's going to take, you know, I don't know, a couple days. Or we can throw it in the microwave and turn on the defrost or the thaw, you know, setting, and we can do it in 30 minutes. That to me is what coaching is like, you can figure it out, but it's going to take, you know, 10 times longer to figure it out versus
more headaches. Too.
What you're paying for when it comes to education is the microwave. Like, hey, you can do this way quicker and get to where you want to be way quicker by just paying for the microwave.
Well, I feel like, and this is where the wealthy value time more than money, which in turn makes them more money. You know, is that I think as I've had a more of a wealth mindset, I'm like, time becomes way more of a depreciating asset that you can never get more back of. Money is always something you can get more back. And I think when you weigh those resources against each other, and you realize, like, no, I actually, my time's so valuable. If I want to be successful, I need to get that bell curve of success happening way more quickly. I'm happy to pay money. Like, I'm happy to pay money for it. I think, you know, when I think about this philosophy too, doing free stuff, I also, if I'm going to consume free information, there's a few things that I'm gonna have to do on my own, like distill everything down. Because like you said on another podcast, the problem, one of the hardest things about real estate is that there's so many ways to make money. So you could go, oh, I've read all these books. Now I feel inundated and overwhelmed with the amount of information I have. What do I do with it? I still have to distill it down into a strategy. It's like, which strategy do I actually follow? You know, and I have to decide that. Then once I decide what strategy to follow, I have to hold myself accountable to it. that accountability is really difficult, especially in the beginning when you don't have a history of success. You know, it's like when you're working out for the first time in your life, how likely are you going to be to get a six pack?
Yeah.
Probably not very likely when you're having to learn all of the nutrition education and fitness that somebody already knows that they can just go do my program and I'll get you a six pack literally in 8 weeks.
Yep.
If you do my program versus you want to become an expert in nutrition, you want to become an expert in fitness, and then you also want to hold yourself accountable to doing those things for how long?
Yeah. I mean, that is with fitness. I mean, that's a perfect analogy for this because about 5 years ago, I wanted to get in really good shape. And I was actually coming to Hawaii on vacation. And I was like 6 months out. I was like, I want to be in the best shape.
And you're going to be shirtless every day.
Yes. Yeah. And so I started researching and, found all things that probably work. But everything was different where, hey, the Mediterranean diet, the paleo diet, the keto diet, the counting your macros diet. So there were so many diets that were involved. And then on top of that, it was the workout programs, like low reps, heavy weight, the CrossFit, like high intensity interval training, or, 4 sets of 12 for these, 3 things, or, there was so many different lifting programs, even like the cardio, like what am I doing for cardio? Am I running long distances? Am I doing, bike rides, swimming? Like what, there's so much out there, and it was overwhelming. And I could have taken the next 3 years to try every one of them and piecemeal it together and figure out like, okay, what is the best system?
Yep.
Or what I chose to do was I hired a coach, and he sat me down and he made me a program. He gave me macros that I was supposed to be hitting. He gave me foods that helped me hit those macros. And he gave me a spreadsheet to track my weight every week. And and then we would, every week we'd get on the phone and like, hey, Camron, you lost X amount. And I think once a month I was going and getting like the actual like body fat, what's it called? The InBody or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So we were tracking that. So like we could make adjustments over that time of like, hey, you didn't lose any weight this week, but you gained, 2 pounds of muscle and lost 2 pounds of fat or something like that. So we know that we're still on the right track. So able to track all of that. And it was the microwave to figuring out fitness, where it was like, I don't do it anymore because I'm just unhealthy, but it helped so much where it was like, okay, now I've got a coach that's telling me exactly what to do and exactly what the next steps are, versus me just being inundated with all of this information everywhere that all, again, probably works, but you have to figure out what works for you and like, what do I want to do? And so it was helpful for me, just like, hey, every morning you wake up, you do this, you eat this, you work out. Here's the lifts that you're doing every single day. Here's how you're tracking it. Here's the spreadsheets that you need. Here you go. And it took the guesswork out of it.
Yeah.
So
real quick, I used to sell for Alex Hormozy a 6-week weight loss challenge that people would put $500 down for. And as long as they lost a certain amount of weight, like 20 pounds or more in 6 weeks, they would get their money back. And then they'd apply it to, whatever, the subscription or the gym was, and apply it towards like a 12-month membership or something, or personal training. But it was crazy. The average person lost about 20 pounds in 6 weeks.
And that's a brilliant marketing strategy, because either you're going to lose the weight and then you're going to want to do another program. So or you're not going to do anything.
And we keep the money.
Yeah, exactly. So you keep the money either way.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Actually brilliant. That's why Alex Hormozy is on his way to being a billionaire. But I love that strategy.
That was an incredible offer.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But
I know we took a big tangent there, and I feel like we covered a lot though with capital too. It sounds like the main priority really is finding deals first. The money will follow, because there's a 1,000 ways to skin a cat. Sounds like there's 1,000 ways to collect money on a deal if you need one.
Yeah, there is. And we can talk about that, because I do think there's like definitely some granular stuff around finding money, because you've got private money, you've got hard money lenders, you've even got, they call them like, what would they be called? Mezzanine lenders, I guess, that will help like with there's a terminology, gator lending, that is like, hey, the earnest money that'll lend on the earnest money and the down payment, and then you use a hard money lender to make up the rest. And so there's a ton of different strategies to lending.
But you have like, how many hours is our funding course in deal flow?
Yeah, it's probably 2. It's only, that one's only a couple hours. That one's not,
because you can get all those granular things because you're going bam, 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 bam.
Lending is going to be the hardest, one of the hardest hurdles to overcome in your mind, especially when you're a beginner.
But easiest to implement.
It's the easiest to implement. It's the easiest to do. Like right now at this stage, money is literally the last thing that I think about, because I've got 50 people on my phone that I can text and say, hey, I've got this deal. Can I have $200,000? And they're going to say yes. Nice. Now I've never done $100 million raise. I
like big multifamily stuff.
Yeah, the biggest raise I've ever done was $7 million, and I got that in a week. So
jeez.
Yeah. So that was the biggest raise I've ever done.
That's pretty cool.
Part of that, part of that was I reached out to people that had lended $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 to me over the last 4 years, and it got great returns. And I said, hey, I'm doing a big raise. Here's what we're doing it for. And every single one of them was like, yeah, sign me up.
Well, that's why I like this model though too, because you're doing so much volume with deals, like so many deals per year, that you get to build a history quicker. Yeah. It's like if you go on a date with a girl 3 times in a day, it's almost like you've dated for 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, whoa, we actually went to 3 different locations, and now the trust we have together is built so much more quickly. Because essentially we went to dinner, or we went to coffee, then we went to dinner. Yeah. Then we went to like ice cream afterwards and are still hanging out in the car. And it's like, whoa, we did like 3 different dates in one day. You get the illusion that we've built a lot more trust and history over time. Yeah. That volume builds history faster than you would have to,
That's exactly. Does that make
sense?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like I've been able to pay people back, like with one of my lenders, they've probably lent on 70, 80 deals with me. So let's just say that the average deal on that is $300,000. So they've lended me $24 million. Now, granted, a lot of that's the same.
It's the same money being repurposed.
Yeah. So it's not like they just gave me $24 million, but they've lended over the course of the last couple of years, $24 million with me. And every single time they've gotten paid.
The likelihood of that person to say yes again is extremely high.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Or if I go to them and I say, hey, I'm doing a $7 million raise, can you give me $2 million? Yeah. The likelihood is like, oh, I've been doing it in $300,000 increments for the last 3 years, and you've always paid me.
If Cameron sees a big opportunity here, there's a big opportunity for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot today. I think I think this is pretty good.
We can dive into more funding, maybe more next week or some other time.
I feel like with another 9 episodes left in this season, I feel like we can really have a couple more granular episodes of each one at some point too. I do like creating more bird's eye view of everything first and then diving deeper in as we come along. I do know on next one, I really want to jump into how to make sure there's a flow of leads always coming in, like you were talking about, because we barely hit on some of those strategies that you use to have constant deal flow. Yeah. Because we talked about like, how do you get your first deals if you're in a new market, but how do you stay in that market for 5 years and do 100 homes a year like that? That's now you're talking about systems of deal flow, which I think would be really fun to talk about. And then the money, again, we'd probably hit on more once we're there. Yeah. Like, how are you doing that on a weekly basis? How are you building a team after that? I think it'd be really fun too.
Love it. I'm excited.
It's awesome. Well, dude, this is a great conversation. You guys listening or watching on the YouTube channel, if you guys have any questions or specific things that you guys want us to talk about or things you want us to address during this season of episodes, leave us a comment. Also, if you're listening, rate and review the podcast. Ooh, It'd be super helpful for us. And in those ratings and reviews, because obviously we're putting out this content for free, part of this is like, we would love for you to build trust with us. And if it's a good fit, work with us as well. I mean, that's some of the transparent purpose behind this, but also we want to get this education out there. I think Cameron, we've talked about this so many times. You love seeing other husbands and wives, parents set their families free financially. Yeah. And that's a big part of this. And we want to do that any way we can with content we're creating, whether it's a paid program or something like this. But it really helps us if you just reciprocate for like 20 seconds to rate and review the podcast. In that rating, you can even just say like, hey, I would love to hear more on this type of subject or this topic. And that gives us more ammo to talk about during future episodes. But again, so glad that you guys took the time to listen to this. We know attention's so important, and you're giving it to us. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
We'll see you on the next episode.
See ya.
Later.